Good morning, good people. It's another lovely day here. My name is Stella Obokelo, and I have the honor to be sharing with us today again on our series, What Makes a Marriage Thrive. We started it out with the unique value you bring into your relationship. And last week, we talked about the role of unwavering commitment in helping your relationship to thrive. Today, we are going to be speaking about the importance of openness and transparency in a relationship. Transparency speaks to openness. It is about illuminating, bringing to light what needs to be seen and what needs to be bare. Transparency is about bringing the whole of you, no secrets, no lies, just the bare truth about yourself into your relationship. Friends, transparency is a key ingredient when it comes to building, thriving, and prospering marital relationships. Allow me share a true life story with us. Many years ago, a couple started out life together, and along the journey of their marriage, the lady developed health complications, which necessitated regular visits to the hospitals. Now, on one of the visits to the hospital, she went together with the husband, and during the time when they were receiving the results in the doctor's office, the doctor told them that the challenge the lady was having was related to a procedure that was done way back, which caused the lady's uterus to be removed. The husband had never known his wife to be lacking a uterus. And as you'd expect, friends, there were more questions than answers. That is just to underscore the importance of being transparent, of being open with our spouses, of laying it all bare. When you're bare with your spouse, you'll be able to build together a thriving marital relationship. And so, friends, I want to share a few things that we need to put into consideration to help us on this journey of building happy and thriving relationships. And I must emphasize the first one is that it starts with you. Everything always starts with you. You need to work on yourself first. You cannot serve your spouse with faithfulness and transparency if you have hidden shadows within you, if you've not worked on yourself, if you don't have a virtue within you of speaking and living by the truth. It starts with you. Once you work on yourself, you will be able to bring light and life and honesty into your relationship, and you will be able to deal with your spouse from a place of transparency, and that will help you to develop and indeed to build a thriving relationship together. There is a principle for those of us who study ICT many years ago that we were introduced to called GIGO. GIGO is garbage in, garbage out. What you feed into yourself is what you'll eventually bring out. That is the fruit you'll produce. And so if you've grown up in a place where it's a default setting for you to speak lies, not to be truthful to people, automatically that is the fruit that you're going to produce even within your marital relationship. And so we need to address issues of our growing up. We need to address how we deal with people, how we relate with people. Is it from a place of truth? Is it from a place of half-truths? Or is it from a place of outright lies? Because lies and half-truths do not build thriving relationships, but truth is the foundation upon which all successful marriages are built. Another thing we need to consider is that you need to be vulnerable to your spouse. You know, when the Bible talks about Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, that the man and his wife were naked and they were not ashamed. Nakedness speaks to a vulnerability that you can only share with your spouse. None of us would be comfortable to be walking around naked before people. But it is only in marriage where you're comfortable to do this. Why? Because your spouse is the person that you're supposed to rip yourself bare and open for without any shame, without any remorse, without any apologies. And so if you find yourself in a place where you're totally vulnerable, where you're totally open, where there is nothing to hide before your spouse, you'll be able to build a healthy relationship, because vulnerability speaks to, this is the whole of me. There is nothing anymore to hide. And that's what nakedness is all about. Nakedness speaks to, there is nothing else you're going to discover, nothing else that you're going to see in me. This is it. This is the full package. This is me. And so, friends, this is an important aspect that we need to bring into our relationships in order to help us to cause them to thrive. I was listening to family therapists a few weeks ago, and they were talking about the aspect of vulnerability, and they painted a very beautiful picture when they brought in an animal. They said when you rip open an animal, you're opening it up, you're exposing it, you're able to see everything that is inside in this animal, and so nothing is hidden anymore. Friends, when it comes to our relationships, it speaks to the same. You need to open yourself up. You need to rip yourself open before your spouse and show them everything that you are, who you are, and what you represent. That will help you to, together with your spouse, build a healthy and a thriving relationship. Another aspect we need to consider is that usually people are not comfortable opening up. They feel guarded. They build walls around themselves because they don't feel a sense of security. People fear to open up and be ridiculed. People fear to open up because they don't want the judgment that can come with opening up. And so I encourage us as spouses in our relationships to be the safe place for your spouse, to be the number one person where your spouse can run to and feel a sense of their shame, their vulnerability is covered by you and not exposed and ridiculed by you. Friends, I also want to let us know that your level of openness, your level of transparency in your relationship, it determines the level of intimacy that you're going to have together in your marriage. For your relationship to work, it takes the two of you. Friends, I want to encourage all of us. Let's be open. Let's be transparent in our relationships. In that way, we shall be able to build thriving and happy homes. I also want to help us to understand that when you value and respect your spouse, they will reciprocate. When you value them and show them that they are number one, when you appreciate them for who they are, that will create a oneness between the two of you, and you will be able to grow your intimacy. And after you've grown your intimacy, that will help you to thrive and prosper your marital relationship. There are a few things I also want to help us just to assess and measure ourselves and see where we stand with regard to transparency in our relationships. The Bible teaches us in Galatians chapter 6 verse 2 that carry one another's burdens. Carrying one another's burdens speaks to two people who are together in marriage. When I have a burden, surely my husband needs to support me in helping me to ease that burden. When my husband is struggling with issues here and there, I need to be the person who is going to be available to support him and to help him come out of it. When you share one another's burdens, that will draw you close together. And friends, you'll be able to build a healthy and a thriving relationship. And so we need to ask ourselves, are we carrying each other's burdens, or our burdens are our individual burdens? If as a wife your burdens are yours alone, or for your maiden family to support you with, then trust me, there is a problem in your relationship. But if your spouse is your number one person that you run to when you're heavily burdened, you're going to build a healthy and a thriving relationship. Another thing we need to consider is, do you have secrets? Do you have issues in the closet? Do you have dark shadows that you're hiding away from your spouse that they do not know? Friends, if you have any secrets, if you have any hidden stuff, if you have any ugly things that you don't want your spouse to know about, it means you are not building a healthy and a transparent relationship, because secrets are extremely exhausting. They are actually a very heavy cross to carry alone. And so I encourage us to just explore and see things that you're hiding as an individual, which your spouse does not know about. They speak to your level of openness and transparency within your relationship. Another thing that we need to see, friends, is that when you mess up, how do you deal with your issues? When you've gone astray, do you acknowledge? Or are you quick to cover up? Do you want to hide it away from your spouse? Are you open and transparent enough to own up when you've gone wrong? That's another way that can help you to judge your level of openness and transparency before your spouse. Another thing, friends, that we need to measure ourselves on is our passwords, our email passwords, our phone passwords. How many of us are comfortable to share our password with our spouse? How many of us are comfortable if you left your laptop accidental and you didn't lock it? If you left your phone unattended and your spouse lands on it, how many of us would be comfortable? Or would you be in a place of, I'm finished, I've finally been caught? That also speaks to our level of transparency. Are you open enough to allow your spouse to see what is in your phone, to see what you receive in your emails? That will also help us to gauge whether we are transparent or otherwise in our marital relationships. Another thing we need to look at when it comes to our bank accounts, our ATM cards. How many of us can give our spouse our ATM card and say, go withdraw this amount of money? How many of us are open enough to do that? Because that is another way to measure your level of openness and transparency within your relationship. Another thing we need to consider, friends, usually when we are driving, of course, we see so many people around us. We see beautiful women, we see handsome men all over us. I would like to ask us a question. When you're moving together with your spouse and you suddenly notice a very striking person, what are your reactions usually? Are you open enough to acknowledge that, yes, you saw that person, she's indeed a beautiful lady, or you saw that gentleman is indeed a handsome man? Are you open enough to acknowledge? Or you'll be saying, I didn't see anything, and yet within you, you know that you actually saw the beauty, and you know that the other person actually struck you. That's another way you can gauge your level of openness and transparency within your relationship. And then also issues to do with your salary, our debts, our assets. How many of us are open enough to share with our spouses and let them know how much salary we earn? How many of us can do this, friends? I've met so many couples where a gentleman is not comfortable to share his salary with his wife. He says, immediately I share my salary with her, she's going to go on a daily shopping spree. She's going to become a spendthrift. I cannot share my salary with my wife. Friends, that's another way to gauge and indeed weigh your level of openness and transparency. Another thing that we need to consider, friends, is that transparency is something that we build. We work on it. Sometimes it's not a default setting for all of us to be transparent, and indeed for many of us, we simply work on it. It's like a muscle that you work on a daily basis. You keep building, you keep working out until you reach the desired level. The same holds for openness within our relationships. You build it on a daily basis, and before you know it, you will have reached the desired level that will help you to build a thriving and a happy marital relationship. As I conclude, friends, I want to draw our attention to the fact that lack of openness and transparency, it destroys marriages. A story is told of a man who ran away from his bride during honeymoon because he was so used to seeing her with too much makeup, with too much cosmetics. He was so used to seeing her with fake hips, fake bums. Everything was so fake about this lady. And so when they reached the honeymoon, he was just so overwhelmed because he could not recognize the lady. Friends, you don't want to reach that place where your spouse cannot recognize you, because what you've presented is a totally different picture from what is on the ground. Another thing is that one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children is to have a marriage that inspires and makes them want to be married. We can only do that if we build our marriages on the premise of openness and transparency. Friends, it's possible when you open up. There is nothing that is not possible. Openness will give you a beautiful and a happy marital relationship. Thank you for listening in today. I encourage us to share widely. I encourage us to keep sending in those lovely comments. I encourage us, friends, to build our relationships on transparency and openness, because that is how we shall transform our society. God bless you, friends. Thank you for listening in again. I will catch you next week. Bye.